Social anxiety disorder is in fact our most common anxiety disorder. Has a lifetime prevalence of 13%. That is 13% of people during their lifetime may develop this disorder. And in fact, it's the most neglected anxiety disorder, and until about 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't even talked about. And I ran a conference as a way of educating people about this disorder. It's amazing the suffering which people go through with this disorder, and it's a failure, and the failure to diagnose it is a concern to me. What it is that people have a marked and persistent fear of more social or performance situation. When the person is exposed to these situations, they become anxious or panicky. Now, it could be in a situation like this where I'm talking to you, or it may be on a more intimate situation like eating a meal. Whatever the situation is, they become anxious. They become distressed. They become distressed because they believe the other person is going to evaluate them in an unfavorable way, which is untrue. But they worry about this also for so much of the time before they enter the situation. Anticipatory anxiety for those people with social anxiety is the norm. They worry about it for days and days and days beforehand. I had a lady who for 7 years put off getting married because of her social anxiety disorder. And she worried about that problem day after day after day. What will people think of me when I'm there? What if I do something wrong? How will the people evaluate me? So this anticipatory anxiety is indeed quite a labor for those people with social anxiety disorder. There's two sorts of social anxiety disorder. One which is generalized, that is, a person is reluctant to go into multiple situations, and those people who have just a specific one. And the most common specific social phobia is in fact talking in public. I don't have that disorder. They don't like public speaking. And the Americans have done some studies on this, and the people they've studied have actually indicated they're more fearful of talking in public than dying. Only the Americans could do a study like that. Now, one of the ones I'm rather interested in, and it's quite a surprise how common it is for men who are reluctant to go to using public urinals. They're embarrassed that they're going to be assessed. And the anticipatory anxiety of going into a urinal and urinating, they get so worried about it, believing they're going to be assessed. And they have an amazing knowledge of where toilets are. They have amazing knowledge of where cubicles are. But it leads to lots of avoidance. Even being on an aircraft, I've had one gentleman who refused to fly because he would be seen going to the toilet and they'd be evaluating him in some sort of way. Writing in front of others. I had an accountant once, and when he was talking to his customers, they would come in, and what would he be doing? He'd be writing, but there was a whole pile of books in front of him, so he could in fact be assessed. Playing musical instruments, playing sports. There's a whole host of phenomena which people will reluctantly enter for fear of being negatively evaluated. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'm having Reynolds here read my speech. So common. And we often find people in industry and persons in responsible positions in companies that often use alcohol as a way of coping. And they'll worry for ages about giving a presentation. And when they get there, they'll take their alcohol away beforehand so they in fact can get through. Another sort of type of interaction, the interaction situations, the one which I'm most interested in is dating. So many people, male and females, avoid dating because they're socially anxious and believe they're going to be evaluated in a favorable way. And one other one which I'm rather interested in is conversing on the telephone. This is where people will not pick up the telephone. They'll let it ring. Nor will they use it, because they believe the other person on the other end is going to evaluate what they are saying in some negative way. They're fearful of, in fact, making a mistake, saying the wrong words, expressing things differently. And they fear that evaluation, even though they can't be seen. And this is most important. Childhood onset of social anxiety is the norm. 40% have it before the age of 10, for 95% before the age of 20. And sometimes it occurs later in life, and that's often associated with illnesses, diseases like Parkinson's disease and Huntington's diseases and so on. The children and the adolescents with social anxiety disorder, they find it difficulty with school, being asked to report in front of the class. They do not like being a teacher peering over their shoulders, and they'll be reluctant to play musical instruments or participate in sport. Invariably, of course, they're not, in fact, understood by the teacher concerned. Paradoxically, these children are also children who tend to misbehave. They also tend to want to avoid school. And we need to be a little bit more considerate when we see these children avoiding or who are being mischievous, and ask them about their anxiety state. The most common sort of symptoms they get are blushing, twitching, and stammering. And they believe everybody's going to evaluate them unfavorably if they show those symptoms. Some will go on to experience panic attacks. And then the question is, are they really suffering from social anxiety disorder, or are they really fearful of the panic attack in the social situation? And we must always indeed work that out. But people who have social anxiety disorder and the panic attacks, and it's related to their social anxiety disorder, rather than panic attacks alone, are indeed a little more difficult to treat. No, comorbidity is the high in terms of social economic situations. 80% have a further psychiatric illness. 70% experience additional anxiety disorder. 70% experience a mood disorder, depression. 80% consider their academic and education opportunities are impaired. I've seen so many people who cannot continue with their education because of social anxiety disorder. 50% fail to complete high school. 20% are dependent on welfare. 35% acknowledge playing truancy. And 40% repeat grades at school because of non-attendance. I had a sufferer of social anxiety disorder a while ago. She had qualified particularly well at Monash University, and she got an honours degree, and she was promised an academic position if she made a presentation. And she came to me for treatment, and we actually got her through. But how much avoidance and how much suffering that patient had gone through just to get her degree. She avoided tutorials. She avoided everything. She's obviously very clever to have got through that far with that condition. But at least she stuck it at the university. There's plenty of people with social anxiety disorder who go to the university the first day and never return. Avoidance behaviours are indeed the greatest impairment in social anxiety disorder. They're reluctant to go out. Avoidance can from avoiding eye contact to avoidance of all interpersonal control or interpersonal contact. They become indeed very isolated. And I said to you, people with this disorder have lots of anticipatory anxiety. They worry about the event before they get there. That can be very intense, and sometimes the anticipatory anxiety for these sufferers is worse than the actual anxiety they experience in the situation. They may experience anxiety or panic whilst in the situation, but also they may experience what I call post-situational anxiety. They go home and they evaluate their performance. They evaluate the performance in a negative way. I've been seen as a fool. I've done the wrong thing. I'm too shy and too reluctant to go into that situation again.